Hi, my name is Professor Tim Richardson. I teach in the School of Marketing and E-Business at the Markham campus of Seneca College, and I'm going to talk to you about the new textbook for BUS106. This is the 7th edition textbook, which is published by mcgraw-hill. The authors are Nichols, McHugh, Cross, and Spruill. This is the original big, huge honking thing that costs about $120, $130 at the bookstore. Professor Valerie Michelli and myself and others on a committee this summer got together and produced this smaller edition, which is specific chapters to Seneca College. That's why the book that you'll actually be buying for this course says Special Edition for Seneca College. So even though it says Understanding Canadian Business 7th Edition, you don't buy this book. You buy this book. All right? Now when you buy this book, you make sure that when you open the inside cover that there's this little piece of paper here and this little card is in there, because when you turn this card over, this gives you the access registration code to get to the website for the course. McGraw-Hill, Ryerson, and other people have made a special website for this course with all kinds of PowerPoints and test banks and videos and everything, which a lot of your profs are going to mention that you should use as a resource for the chapter set we're dealing with. So let's have a look at the book. First of all, let's go through the table of contents. The first thing we do in this textbook is just talk about the basics of business itself. We talk about the business environments. And the fundamentals of this course on Introduction to Business is the 6 environments, which are the things that you cannot change, the things that affect you. The Intro to Marketing course, MRK-106, is about the 4 Ps, product, price, promotion, place. So the purpose for Chapter 1 is to give you an introduction to the political, legal, regulatory environment. That's laws, rules, regulations, things politicians do. The economic environment, the technological environment, the competitive environment, the social cultural environment, as well as the geographic environment, which is something that I'm going to add in as well. Textbook, it talks about the global environment, but we really should be talking about the geographic environment. Chapter number 2 then gets into all the things to do with the economic environment. We talk about some of the fundamentals of what is economics, how prices are determined, the concept of supply and demand. It sounds like a little bit of theory, but in reality, companies actually use these charts and diagrams, and I'll show you how they work. We also study some of the isms like socialism and communism, and we understand that they're not really pure and applied like they were theoretically so many decades ago. Chapter number 3 talks about the role of government in business. In Canada, this is a big thing because the government's in your face about a lot of types of things, rules and regulations. We'll talk about government responsibilities and things like taxation. We'll talk about how government can help business. There's many things that government provides in terms of aid and services. We'll also talk about government buying things from you. Many people start a small business selling things to the government. That's purchasing policies. Chapter number 4, we'll talk about ethics and social responsibility. 10, 15 years ago, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about ethics in courses, but these days it's a big part. That's because the social cultural environment and the technological environment are bringing so many people together in mass circumstances that the question of ethics becomes more and more important. So we'll talk about corporate responsibility to the customers, to investors, responsibility to society, and all of this in the context of the world of YouTube and MySpace and CNN, where if companies don't behave ethically, then they get in trouble, stock price loses, etc. Chapter number 5 will talk about the forms of business ownership. That's just a fancy way of saying we'll talk about a sole proprietorship. That's just you running a company. We'll talk about partnerships. That's you with another person, and there's different types of partnerships. And we'll talk about a corporation. There are advantages and disadvantages of a corporation, and I will tell you specifically how to become incorporated. It's not very difficult. We'll also talk about franchising and cooperatives as well. Chapter number 6 talks about entrepreneurship. Now, it used to be that when students were in this class, they look forward to graduating and end up with a big, huge company and have dental plan and pension and benefits and all those kinds of things. But more and more times these days, companies are laying off people, so that means a lot of students, when they graduate from the program, are going to want to develop their own type of business. That's why Chapter 6 is all about entrepreneurship, and we'll talk about what it takes to be an entrepreneur, some of the things to start a small business, how do you start your own company. Some students may be in a position to work with a family business. We'll talk about that as well. Chapter number 7 is management and leadership. Not immediately, but several years after you graduate from college, you may be in a position to be the boss of other people. And we'll talk about some of the fundamentals of management, which are PODC, planning, organizing, directing, and controlling. We'll talk about how to organize people to be most effective. Chapter number 8 is competing in global markets, which is just a fancy way of saying international business. All business is international business. Even small companies are importing little products and services. So we'll talk about how to export, licensing, franchising, contract manufacturing, little things like these, and how they're affected by social, cultural forces and political forces. Chapter 9 is titled Producing World-Class Goods and Services. This is a fancy way of saying, how do you make stuff? So we'll talk about operations management planning, things like TQM, total quality management, just-in-time, purchasing, mass customization, the actual way that companies make things. Chapter number 10, the financial services industry, talks about money, the different forms of money. We have digital versions of money and hard currency, and it's not always the exact thing. I mean, we may think of money as something with a queen on it, but there's other types of versions of money. There's credit for having purchases bought, there's Canadian Tire money and other versions of things like that. We'll talk about the banks, some of the services provided by banks that you might not know about, as well as dealing with things to do with the internet, electronic banking. We'll also talk about stocks and bonds, and I will explain to you why a company would want to be publicly incorporated and sell stocks and how you raise money from that. Chapter number 11 is about financial management. It talks about the role of finance and dealing with understanding how companies use the budgetary process, different types of financial controls, funding, credit operations. If a person is buying from you, do you give them 30 days, 60 days? Having money to get inventory, do you pay now, do you pay later? Alternative sources of funding, those type of things. We'll also talk about short-term loans, factoring accounts receivable, use of credit cards. That's chapter number 11. Now, the difference between these two books is not just size. There's some chapters in this book that we don't necessarily need to cover for BUS106. But also the end of the chapter material is just briefly mentioned here. At the end of each chapter there's a couple of key terms. There's a couple of questions about critical thinking, and then this exercise here that says taking it to the net. What that means is you log on to this website, you have the card that's inside here, you use your user ID and your password to get the information to complete those exercises, because some of the professors that are teaching BUS106 will have you do some of the exercises at the end of each one of these chapters. There's also multiple choice quizzes which you can do and get your score online, which are very similar to the questions that you'll be asked by the professors during the course of the term. So if you practice those multiple choice quizzes, they'll be very helpful. I hope this has been a useful introduction, and good luck in the course.